Did you know that the testimony of you will allow you to speak from the grave? Think about that. Long after your voice is quieted and your footsteps have faded, the faith you lived will echo in ways that you may never imagine. It'll become a story, a legacy, a light for others to follow. Hebrews 11 is often called the Faith Hall of Fame, but it's more than just a list of names. It's a roadmap, a reminder of what is possible by faith. Over and over again, those two words ring out like a drumbeat. By faith. By faith, Abel offered a better sacrifice. By faith, Noah built an ark. By faith, Abraham obeyed even when he didn't know where he was going. By faith, Sarah found the strength to believe even when the promise seemed impossible. This is not blind faith. It's bold faith. Faith with substance. Faith that stares into the unknown and says, I trust you, Lord. Faith that doesn't rely on what the eyes can see, but what the heart knows to be true. And here's the thing. Every one of those stories didn't end with the person who lived it. Their faith spoke beyond their lifetime. Abel's faith still testifies even though he's long gone. Noah's obedience shaped generations. Abraham's journey became the foundation of a nation. Sarah's belief brought forth a promise that still echoes today. By faith, their lives became evidence, proof that God's promises are real, even when they're not seen. So, what will your story say? What will your faith testify about when you're no longer here to speak? Hebrews 11 isn't just a chapter. It's a challenge, a call to walk by faith, to live in such a way that your story becomes a witness, to trust in what God is doing even when you can't see how he's working. Because the truth is, by faith, we see the unseen. By faith, we overcome the impossible. And by faith, we leave behind something far greater than ourselves. So the question isn't just, what do you see? The question is, what do you believe? Because what you believe will outlive you.
Have died in yesterday's crash on Davis Avenue. Welcome to the Power of F4R Podcast. My name is Gabriela Arismendi, and I'm here with our host, Deshaun Powell. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing pretty good. How about you?
I'm doing great.
Excellent.
Great. Let's dive right in.
Let's dive in.
Doubt and faith, two forces that often collide in the quiet moments of our lives, challenges us as Christians to constantly evaluate our beliefs. Hebrews 11:1 tells us, now faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. In this, we know that faith isn't just about trusting in the unseen. It's about holding on to hope even in our darkest moments. Whether it's navigating doubts about the future or feeling stagnant in life, faith calls us to lean on God's promises when the world seems overwhelming. But in the moment, we can go through a range of thoughts and begin to question the very faith we believe we have. This begs the question, does the presence of doubt signify our lack of faith, or is the absence of it a sign that our faith is full? So, what are your thoughts on this question?
Well, I think the first thing to acknowledge is the fact that, everybody doubts. right? Unless you're the Messiah himself.
Yeah.
Okay. Everybody has a measure of faith. And I think that's important to understand. So now, when you're on this faith walk, it's going to reveal itself at different intervals of time through different circumstances, and the objective is to learn how to overcome the doubt. When you look at chapter 11 of Hebrews, and it goes through all of the patriarchs, and it breaks down, their individual circumstances that they were dealing with. It's very rare that people went forth without some level of doubt inside of them, right? You've got, like, when you start looking at it, okay, so they talk about Enoch. Now, the interesting thing about Enoch is that he walked with God, that was his testimony. At least that's how it lays it out. But when you understand the story of Enoch, and you understand the power in that phrasing that they say he walked with God. So in like Amos chapter 2, verse number 2, I think is where the verse is at. I could be off, but I know it's in the book of Amos. I'm pretty sure chapter 2. It says, can two walk together except that they agree? And I think that's an important component of Enoch, because understand that Enoch was translated. He didn't see death. There's only two people in the Bible that are spoken about as not seeing death, and that's Enoch and then Elijah. Elijah being taken up in a whirlwind to heaven. And it's a powerful thing when you think about Enoch in the early ages, if you will, having a relationship with God and having the testimony that's left behind that he walked with God. Like, just try to put that into his appropriate perspective. He's not perfect. He's not the Messiah. He's so what that tells us is that there is the possibility for us to have such a relationship with God that we walk with him. And we've been given that opportunity. So even though we may be flawed beings, there is still that opportunity to be able to walk with God. And so now we'll just say he was a mature, a much more mature believer. Yeah. Right. So then you think about like Noah, and the situation with Noah is that he has to build this ship, and in building this ship, when you're hearing the story about him building the ship, it's always told, and it's very short, as they tell that story. But the story is him building this ark that takes over 100 years to build. Yeah. When you're doing something of that magnitude, first of all, you've got all of the doubters. Yeah. You've got the haters.
Those are real.
That are, looking at you like you're crazy for doing what you're doing. And it manifests itself in various different ways. And they sow seeds of doubt in you in their interactions with you, such that even though you may have believed and you may have thought that, this is a God thing that I'm carrying out, the reality of it is they're sowing those seeds of doubt that may make you question at some point along the way whether or not what I'm doing is actually a me thing or a God thing. And so it becomes important to understand how these various different seeds of doubt get sown and then manifested in your mind, and to know that the adversary in all of his ways is going to try to sow those seeds. And sometimes, they're just children of the adversary. The devil may not be paying attention to you like that, right? But the reality of it is that people in and of themselves is enough to deter you from whatever mission God may have you on. So when you're early on in the faith, Jesus gives this parable about the seed that falls on ground, and then he talks about the various different ground that the seed falls on. So it says, some seed fell by the wayside, some seed fell on stony ground, some seed fell into thorny ground, some seed fell into good soil. And the representation within that particular parable has to do with the seed being the word of God, and then the ground that it falls on represents the hearts of men, and then the various different scenarios that the ground is based upon has to do with, the ability to be able to receive the seed, and the seed to be able to take root and actually blossom. In other words, to produce some level of fruit.
Mm-hmm.
And so you understand very quickly in that particular parable, because the first place where the seed falls is by the wayside. And it talks about it in the sense that the seed falls by the wayside, and then, I think it was ravens or, swoop in and carry the seed off.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like, if I interact with you for the first time, and this is the first time that you're hearing the gospel, and I give you a good word, a word for your life, and I'm giving you information that is meant to help propel you and to reinforce or encourage and empower you. And then you'll have others who will come around, and then they will say something to counteract or to contradict those things which have been told to you. Mm-hmm. Somebody may come to you and tell you, you're going to be great. You can do X, you can do Y, you can do Z. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. But then somebody else will come along, somebody who's familiar with you, familiar with your past, and they'll tell you, you're never going to be anything, or don't believe that stuff. That's just nonsense. Mm-hmm. And what they're doing is they're robbing you of your future, your destiny, the things that God called you to. And you have to understand that haters have been around for, the ages. A lot of individuals who are in the faith, who are on the journey, are going to have examples that verify, validate, and reinforce the fact that God is real, that Christ is real in their life. But that doesn't mean they're not going to have moments in the future after that time that they don't doubt. Mm-hmm. It's like signs, wonders, and miracles in your life that God has kind of met. It is the classic situation that so many believers in that time, and then over the course of time throughout the ages in the Bible, where in spite of what they've seen, they still at some point doubt. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so the presence of doubt has nothing to do with the absence of faith. Mm-hmm. It just means that you're on the journey and you got some more walking this thing out in order to arrive at the place where you know that God is real in your life. You know that that God's got you, and that you can move forward in that to the extent that you don't take on the worries that the world tries to place on you. Yeah. There's a such thing as being overconfident. Mm-hmm. And in the faith, you see that manifest itself a lot, where you've got overconfident believers who may have fallen victim to the trap of believing that somehow they themselves have the power. Right? Yeah. I need to give some illustrations. So in the Bible, there's a familiar story about the 7 sons of Sceva. I won't go into all of the details about it, but the short version of it is these 7 sons of Sceva, having heard about Jesus Christ and that the Messiah had came and that he cast out demons, and that the apostles, they cast out demons in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, and that the demons flee. They go forth, call themselves casting out demons in the name of Christ. They come upon this one demon, and they call themselves casting the demon out. But this demon, he's a little different. He like, I don't recognize you. Who are you? Yeah. I ain't never heard of you before. He like, yeah, you ain't Jesus. He like, Jesus, I know. You ain't Jesus. Yeah. He's like, Paul? I'd heard of Paul. But who y'all? And then he commenced to kicking their tails, such that they run out of this house, as we would say, bucket naked. And it goes to show you that sometimes you can step in the lanes that aren't meant for you. Sheesh. Yeah. You going ahead of your time. You're thinking you're one place that you're not. You're usurping the process and believing so much in the you, not the God that's in you.
Yeah.
That you put yourself in compromising positions and you're in over your head because you tried to elevate yourself instead of letting God elevate you.
So how do you think people get to that place?
Oh, I'm glad you asked that. So let's talk about how we get there.
Okay.
Let's talk about how we get there in a natural sense, right?
Yeah.
So we ain't got to be overly spiritual about this, right?
Yeah.
Let's just talk about it in a natural sense. So, have you ever met someone who, let's just deal with academics, who considered themselves smart?
Yeah.
Have you ever met somebody who considered themselves the smartest?
Yes.
And how does that kind of manifest itself? How did you arrive at the place where you're like, they think they're the smartest person in the room? What was it about them? What did their actions allude to that gave you the impression that they're the smartest person in the room?
I guess one of the things that I probably noticed was them being praised a lot by their peers or by teachers and multiple adult, like if I'm talking back in school, then I'm like, especially people who are like professional in their careers who are teaching us, and like they're praising, constantly giving praise, which is nothing wrong with that, but sometimes it can get to people's head, and I guess that's how it happens.
And I'm glad you said that.
Yeah.
Sometimes the praise of man can go to your head. Sometimes we become our own idols. You don't gotta look externally. And then you'll start saying foolish stuff like, I am a god. Or we are gods. You have no power.
Yeah.
You cannot give life. You have life. The God of life gave you life, but you don't really have any power. That is the poison that sometimes we feed off of that leads us to that place where we start becoming, idolatrous or, becoming our own idols. That place where we start feeling ourselves so much that we're blinded to what we don't know until it hits us.
Yeah, I think because we are in the age of technology, it's even more it's a lot bigger now, that whole getting in your head and thinking you're bigger than what you really are, because of technology and just status and clout and all that stuff. You know what I mean?
I'm glad you said that, because it's always based off of a measuring rod, and that measuring rod, it seems to be different from generation to generation.
Yeah.
The measuring rod of your relevancy today may be the number of people that are following you on one of the social media platforms.
Yeah.
The number of people that subscribe, or the number of people who, have bought something that you're selling. How much money you have in your bank account.
Yeah.
Who you get to hang with. Because you used all of these terms. You use status. And then if you don't have those things, then somehow you're lesser.
Yeah, or unhappy.
Yeah. Or you should be miserable, right? Because you're not this. And that's what they feed you. Now, the lie is that they don't show you all the other stuff that's going on behind the scenes. They're only showing you the picture that they want you to see. So there's a lot of overconfident people in the faith that project like they never doubt. Like they don't, the stuff that they go through, they're just nothing more than conquerors. They've bought into this concept of brand.
Yeah.
And they have to protect their brand, because their brand probably there's an economic bottom line to their perception or the people's perception of them.
Mm-hmm.
And they can't do anything to hurt that perception because it will equate to them having less.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're in the... Go ahead.
You're talking about people in the faith.
I'm talking about people in the faith. So I've cut over from things of the world, the natural aspects of it. And now I've kind of gone over to say that, yeah, there's a parallel, right? There's a parallel to how we as individuals act in the world and how it bleeds over into the faith. So, you walk around and you act like you've got the healing power that Jesus has, and so now you smacking people on the head.
I think it's so interesting to think like that because it gives an appearance of one thing, but as a child of God, don't you want to be able to show that you can get through adversities and you know what I mean? And not seem like, oh, I don't doubt. No, you doubt because you're human and that's what it is. And then you overcome it because you pray and you do your devotional, you do your work and you put into it, and that's how you overcome it because you see a way through.
Well, it seems counterintuitive. Yeah. Right? And to your point, there are plenty of people that do what you just said. That's, I'm dealing with a challenge, and they put that out there, and this is what I did, and I'm pressing through, and this, that, and the other. So there's that aspect. To the other part of what you said, they don't tell you the thoughts that's going through their head, though.
Yeah, it's true.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, there are some folks that are authentic, that are out there that'll give you. I'm gonna give you all of me. Yeah. Here's what I'm struggling with. And here's some of my reservations, my doubts. Here's kind of what I'm going through. I got a day. Here's the type of day I'm having, and here's where it has me in my head. I'm not saying I don't believe no more. I'm just saying I'm having a rough day. Yeah. And you're right. If more people heard that side of it, it'd be a little bit more palatable. But what we make ourselves out to be is superheroes. And then now nobody can relate because they're like, I'm not a superhero. How do I get to superheroism, right? Yeah. The reality of it is we all suffer to some extent. Now, some people are just, better concealers of their suffering, right? And again, goes right back to what I was saying is, they will only show you the side that they want you to see of them, and it's usually them conquering the challenges that they're facing. But yeah, we do need more husbands and wives talking about the struggles of marriage and how hard it is to get to year 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, right? And what that entails. There needs to be some level of transparency when it comes to how we get to, because most people only get to see the finished product and
the tip of the iceberg. Yeah,
right. And they don't understand and what they're desiring is to understand how you got to the finished product. Yeah. Like, I want to know the mess that you had to go through. Make it real for me so that you can help build up my faith. But doubt sticks around because, man, you look together, right? You look like you ain't got no problems. Like it's always been that way. And so, not sharing that part of ourselves is another worldly, paradigm that kind of seeps into the church, which is, I figured it out. Now you gonna have to do it too.
Yeah, that's hard.
No. I can't. Look, I can't hold your hand. Oh. Sorry, she left me hanging. I can't hold your hand and help you get there.
Yeah.
I'll give you some advice, but I'm not. Ooh, no, that's too much work. You want me to what? Disciple you? You want me to be like in your life and help give you direction, help you to avoid the stumbling blocks, deal with the fact that you're gonna listen to me, and deal with the fact that you're not gonna listen to me. Yeah. Deal with the fact that sometimes you'll take my advice and do what I said to do, and then sometimes you won't. Sometimes you go call me at 3 a.m, and then other times I can't find you. You mean I got to deal with all of that?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, then I got to kind of take on your mess that when you hurt, that you need a shoulder to cry on, I can be there, and then try to help prop you up. Oh, then I'm going to have to share everything that I worked so hard to learn. I'm going to just share it with you for free?
Mm-hmm.
Well, God forbid.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and I got to do this and sacrifice some of the vacations that I want to go on, or the dinners that I want to go to, or, the time that I wanted to have to myself.
Yeah.
God forbid.
Mm-hmm.
No, you're going to have to figure it out. Didn't nobody do that for me?
So you're talking about, this is someone who was in the same position, right?
Is it not?
Yeah.
I mean, isn't it that we go to church Sunday in, Sunday out? However many years, many folks been going to church. But if you've been going to church for multiple years, I'm going to say if anything longer than 3 years, and you have not grown, and you have not carried somebody along with you, what's going on?
Yeah.
I mean, what are we doing? And I understand that that's going to irritate a lot of folks, me saying that, but it's a reality.
Yeah.
We've lost touch with the need for there to be discipleship that goes forth, because at least if you're in doubt, but you've got a direct line, if you will, to somebody who's walked through much of what you're walking through, and you can call them up, and they will share the burden, that you're going through with you, and give you guidance that'll help you get through it. Or they may not know. I mean, there is an argument that some folks would make that says, I'm trying to figure it out myself. Or would they quit fronting?
Yeah.
Quit fronting like you're not trying to figure it out. Quit front, because guess what? If you were being honest and saying, I'm trying to figure it out myself, but I'm a little bit further along than you, and I'll do my best to help you where I can, but I ain't making no promises. I mean, good Lord, if you just trying to, get somewhere, I mean, I'll take that.
Yeah.
But then there's the other reality. I'm introducing a lot of stuff. There's this other reality where the world has conditioned you to not follow people that are just slightly ahead of you. Yeah, I'm going to say it again. The world has conditioned you to not follow people that are just slightly ahead of you. They got to be like doing it. The trap of following people that are so much further ahead of you is that the information that they have to give you is not even relevant to you where you are.
Yeah.
How you go ask them? Look, there are stages to this, right? If you're making a few $100s a month, your next goal is to get to the thousands.
Yeah.
But you watching and following millionaires who don't even operate on that. They ain't operated on that level in a very long time. The information that they're giving out is for people aspiring to be where they are, and that's usually the crowd that's behind them.
Yeah.
Just behind them. You way behind them.
Yeah.
They're not giving out that type of messaging, but that's who you'll follow. And then you'll poo-poo the person who's doing slightly better than you, who can at least help. I can't tell you everything. I can't tell you how to be a millionaire, but I can tell you how to get to where I got.
Yeah.
So it is like all of that's in play. And when you're talking about walking in the faith, right? It's tough. It's tough for somebody new to the faith or younger in the faith to be able to relate in the same fashion as somebody who's trying to become a thousandaire to somebody who's a millionaire. It's tough for somebody who's early on in the faith trying to relate to somebody who seems like they can encounter no wrong and do no wrong, who's so full of faith, and they give you their advice to you, oh, you just need to get over it. Or you just need to move on from it. Yeah. Okay, I'm asking you advice on the how then. I get it. I should do it, but how? I need to retrain my mind to be able to function the same way. And you just, and so we get these, these cliche responses to real life situations
Yeah.
that's not helpful for us to be able to move on. And that sows even more doubt.
Yeah.
So you walking around, you got no doubt. I'm walking around, I got doubt. But you can't help get me to no doubt because your no doubt is really a front.
Yeah.
You just faking like, I don't have those problems. And so it is a problem that continuously reinvents itself in various different situations simply because we can't be transparent with one another.
Yeah.
I can't be transparent with you and say, even though I'm sitting here doing this podcast, that I'm hurting because I just lost a friend. You know, tonight I find that out. And it would be a lie to say that even right now I'm not struggling. I am struggling right now. But at the same time, that friend would tell me, you better not stop on my account. You know what's important, what needs to be done.
Yeah.
You need to get it done. And so I don't have the ability to stop.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, that's what they would say to me. And so does it negate the fact that I'm dealing with something? No. Does it mean I'm impervious? No. Does it mean I just don't feel? No. But we do learn over time how to manage.
Yeah.
Right? We learn how to manage the hurts. We learn how to manage the pains. When a kid falls down and scrapes their knee, if you're a good parent, you tell them, you be all right, get on up. Here, let's go ahead and rub that off. All right, get back out there and play.
Yeah.
Now, if you go ahead and you codify them and baby them and say, oh my God, are you okay? Blah, blah, blah. If you do that, then naturally they're going to overreact to what is a situation that millions of kids deal with every day differently.
Yeah.
And so there's a need, even in saying all of that, there's a need for us to ensure that in order for there to be more of us who understand what they're capable of, we have to present ourselves. Not in the light and how we want to be perceived, but keep it real to be able to say, this is what it is. And none of it's easy. Yeah. There's good times, there's bad times. There's indifferent times. It's neither good nor bad, it's just. Because I feel like people can relate to that a whole lot better. Yeah. Right?
Absolutely.
It's not so polarizing, not so polar opposites where it's either really good or really bad. Yeah. Be honest with somebody, even though you got a good job, be like, I really don't like my job, and I don't want to sound like a pessimist, but I know it pays well, and I know, the perception is, man, you're living it up. But I really don't like the job that I do. It's not fulfilling. I probably should do something else, but I do it because I got bills. And that's keeping it real instead of faking the funk. Yeah. My life is so great. Yeah. Is it really though? You don't get mad? You don't get angry? Yeah. You don't get frustrated? Well, why do people need to see that? Because they need to know you're human. So I think there's an importance to us understanding the need for us to be transparent, because it helps those who are trying to walk this thing out and they're early in their journey, or they're in a rough spot in the journey. Man, it helps a whole lot to know somebody's experienced what you've experienced and made it through. Yeah. It helps to know that somebody's in a fight with you, that is invested in you. And it helps to know that it's actually normal. It's common. Yeah. Right? Yeah. 1 Corinthians chapter 10, 8 through 13, I think. It talks about the fact that there's nothing that happens to man that is uncommon. Right? And then it talks about the fact that no matter what circumstance you find yourself in, there's there's no situation that has fallen upon you that God hasn't given you a way out.
Mm-hmm.
And it lets you know that you're going to encounter some things. It didn't say you're going to be saved from all of the bad things. It didn't say it was not going to rain on you. What it said is you're going to encounter things. And as you encounter things, just know that there's nothing that you're going to encounter that God hasn't given you a way out.
Yeah.
All you got to do is stand in there
Mm-hmm.
and hold on
Mm-hmm.
and endure.
Mm-hmm. So, can you tell me about a time that you were overconfident in your faith?
I've never been overconfident. No. A time, I can tell you about a time, not necessarily overconfident,
Mm-hmm.
but certainly wasn't ready.
Okay. Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
One time comes to mind, and it you know, yeah, it was somewhat. I was embarrassed
Mm-hmm.
at myself,
Mm.
Because it became like an awkward moment.
Mm.
So me and some brothers in the faith,
Mm-hmm.
we all sung, and we would sing, praise and worship,
Okay.
and in many respects we're like all soulless, but when we come together, like we do something nice. I ain't saying I ain't saying, well, look, I'm not gonna say anything, but we would do some stuff.
Okay.
And so we are, we're all believers, strong in the faith, right? And so one of the things that we had started doing is we would just sing no matter where we were, right? If we were hanging. And so it got to where we were, hanging out at I think it was an Applebee's. We're hanging out at the Applebee's, and then we just kind of like go in. Like in Applebee's. Like, and it's probably not uncommon. I don't know how, I've never seen it happen, but but we just like, we go full in.
Wow.
Praise and worship.
That takes some confidence.
Sure.
Yeah, that does.
Yeah. Yeah, and we just, and I'm not saying that we were not disruptively loud or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
But, if you were having a conversation at a nearby table, we overpowered your conversation.
Now, is it because you just felt it in your spirit, or is it because
I can give a lot of reasons.
How long ago was this?
This was a long time ago.
Okay.
This was probably 18 years ago, maybe. I'm gonna say, yeah, young, and you're confident in the faith, and I think it was probably early 20s, right? Okay. And man, we singing, and people are watching and listening, and they're like, and we go in, and I think we finished a song or two, and folks like, and then you had a brother come over, and we're all sitting at the table. It was the three of us, and he comes over and he's like, "Man, y'all really blessed me. That was really great. What you guys did and things of that nature." And we like,
nothing.
Thanks.
Oh.
And he was like,
all
right. I just wanted to. Now, afterwards, I'm like, we should probably have had a better response.
What would you have said?
Well, okay, hindsight is 20/20, right? But one of the things that we could have said, how we could have tied a bow around that thing, is like, thank you, brother. Yeah. Is there anything that we can pray with you about?
There you go.
It would have been a perfect lead-in, because he basically... and we blessed him. So what we were singing obviously resonated. Yeah. So much so that he came to our table, okay, to tell us that we blessed him. Thank you for the singing. And we had nothing. That's the problem with being young and just, you're young, you got all the zeal in the world. You ain't got a plan. See, we didn't have a plan. We had all the zeal in the world, all the confidence in the world. We understood our giftings. But we didn't have a plan.
Yeah.
We didn't have a plan that when somebody walked up, as we're doing that, if somebody walked up, how we could have leveraged that as a means by which to lead somebody to Christ. And if we would have done that, just for instance, if we could have somehow prayed with that man, not knowing, we didn't know his eternal state. We didn't even find that out. We didn't say, "Are you a believer, brother? Do you have, are you saved?" We didn't ask any of that. We just flat left it there. Immature. Yeah. Still learning. All the zeal in the world, but just no plan. Yeah. And that taught me a lot that particular day about it. Sometimes we jump out there with good ideas, but an idea is not enough. It's good to be intentional, but it's good to be intentional and have a plan.
Yeah. How often do people hold back when they're meant to be a tool?
Yeah.
Like for me, something as little as sharing a motivational post with family, friends, something, a verse or something. I'm like, ooh, no, I'm not gonna. I don't know why. I just get this feeling in me. I'm like hesitant. I don't know why. I want to share it with them. Something in me wants to share it with them. But I don't know. I know many other people probably relate to that.
In the world that we're in, we're conditioned to think that we will be judged. And nobody likes rejection. Yeah. We're conditioned to be judged. We know that we'll be judged. And the idea of being rejected will hold us back from doing a whole lot of things. So, yeah, I mean, that makes perfect sense.
And there's like nothing wrong with being rejected at all.
No.
But like, how do we deal with it?
Well, I mean, dealing with rejection. Woo! We're talking about being on the faith journey, right? Yeah. We're on the faith journey. I think the first thing about how you deal with rejection is understanding rejection is going to come. Yeah. And it is not a death sentence. Rejection is not a death sentence.
Yeah, it feels like the end of the world.
Does it feel like the end of the world? It feels
like I'm like, oh, why did I ask that?
Look, there's certain career spaces that you probably don't want to be in when you get if you don't like rejection, right? But rejection is something that we all have to deal with. And we have to understand that, that rejection, no matter what it is, what is what the world meant for evil, God means for good. We got to learn that there are certain things that are actually going to help us. That our perception of it is so negative that it's somehow going to harm us. There's a preoccupation with not being rejected. And it's causing a lot of strife, especially when you talk about young folks. Yeah. And just that whole dynamic of being accepted. I mean, in our previous podcast episode, we talked about wanting to be a part and the need to be a part. But the flip side of that is, how do you manage rejection? You have to look at rejection differently. So now you got to rewire your brain about rejection because somehow we've been wired to receive rejection as the ultimate negative. So, I mean, I could tell a number of stories. I'll tell one story about a series of rejections. I had posted to I don't want to say something like, it was like 18 different positions. Now you might say, why would you post to 18 different positions? You were just hopping all over the place. No, I didn't hop all over the place. I just didn't get selected. So I was posting for position after position, and I was just getting rejected for every position.
You were qualified for all of them.
I was qualified for all of them, but I was getting rejected.
Yeah.
So, maybe it's something about you. Doubt starts to think, maybe what's wrong with me? Well, there's nothing wrong with you. And so I posted for all these positions, and I'll never forget, I posted for this one position. It was like a supervisor position. And when I posted for this position, I got rejected. And when I got rejected, they felt it necessary to pull me in to kind of like let me down softly and to give me kind of an explanation of the why they rejected me. And so they went as far as the two people that had interviewed me, they brought in human resources as well.
Wow.
To be a part of this meeting. And I'm not exactly sure what they were attempting to accomplish, but nonetheless, they brought in the HR person, and I knew what this meeting was about. They kind of informed me ahead of time, and they basically said, this is to talk about, the position and why you weren't selected and things of that nature. Now, I was overqualified for the position. I certainly should have been one of the first candidates, and I had certainly put in my time there at the place. But what it basically came down to is we get into this meeting room, and I have a pretty solid memory, especially when I was, in my earlier years. And they started calling out, well, it was this. And I said, no. I said, you may remember at the time I said this, and then you wrote it down. And I said, if you look, and then they go and because they got their notes from, and they're like, oh yeah, I guess you did say that. And I got perfect recall when it comes to this stuff. And I'm already used to being rejected. This was like the final straw for me for being rejected. And I think they knew that. They knew I was upset and probably thought I was going to go to HR and all this other stuff. By the time we got into HR, it's like, why do you have me here? It was kind of like, yeah, you guys didn't really come up with a legitimate reason for why you didn't give him the job. And why did we have to have this meeting? So in the moment, you're experiencing all of that rejection, and you're like, you feel some kind of way. And you can start coming up in your head with all types of things, right? Now, okay, in case you couldn't tell, I am a person of African-American descent. At this particular internet service provider, I was largely outnumbered by my counterparts who were taking on the various different roles. And there'd be a subset. It wasn't a solid mix of people.
Gotcha.
There were a handful of people. So naturally you're going through these stuff, it's because, I'm black. They don't want to see a black person get into these positions. I know some of y'all may be like, yeah, I was a believer, but I'm not ignorant of the realities of how I'm perceived. I may perceive myself as Christian, but you may only see the color of my skin. I can deal with that. I understand that's the world that I live in.
Yeah.
And I got all of these different reasons as to why they're blocking me. So I ended up taking a role on third shift, and I ended up starting 2 companies. That's how fed up I was. I'm gonna start 2 companies. So I worked basically like 16 to 18 hour days for like a year. I was working the company during the day, and I was working at this ISP at nighttime. And I'll never forget, ISP, you're taking calls. I'll take these calls, and then folks would tell me, be like, why are you there? I've had people, on the line ask you, like, how long have you been there? And I tell them the amount of time, and they're like, why are you still there? It's just like, you're too good for this job.
Wow.
And they're basing that off of their conversations with the other reps and whatnot. And they're just kind of like, yeah, what are you doing? Why are you still here? You're clearly, and sometimes you can't necessarily see that. So I start these couple of companies, and man, one of the companies ends up taking off. And the aftermath of that is that had I taken any of those jobs, I would have got comfortable.
Yeah.
I would have got comfortable, and I would have found myself stuck. What I later realized when I evaluated as a whole is it's very easy to think, that it was man blocking me.
Yeah.
But truly the reality of it is that God opens doors that no man can close, and God closes doors that no man can open. What I perceived as man blocking me was nothing more than God ensuring that those doors didn't open to me.
Yeah.
Regardless of who was utilized to make that happen, I would not be where I am today. I would not be doing the things that I am doing today if I had found myself in those different positions. I would have settled.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have utilized the full talent that I have, or intellect, or and so one of the things that I learned early on is that with respect to faith, a lot of it has to do with positioning, proper positioning. You got to be positioned to walk through the doors that God has for you to be opened up.
Yeah.
Right? And what do I mean by positioning? Well, much like the scenario of us singing and then not being prepared.
Yeah.
We didn't actually have a plan after somebody, would approach us, which you would think would be an obvious thing, but clearly it wasn't. We were caught off guard by the thing and looking around like, you got nothing? I got nothing. What I learned is that in order to walk through the doors that God wants to take you through, you need to get yourself prepared to walk through those doors. And that preparation has to do with building yourself up so that when the doors open, you can walk through it and not just get there, but stay there. You got to be able to get through the door and be able to maintain when you get there. So a lot of people, I had one preacher say it's easy to obtain, but it's tough to maintain, right? And dealing with the fact that, you can slide into a role, you can even force your way through a door, but you may get there and you may not have the requisite tools to be able to stay there.
Yeah.
And so it becomes necessary for us to build ourselves up and prepare ourselves so that when we finally do get that opportunity, we can actually, maintain. We won't fall flat on our face.
Yeah.
And so you have to evaluate, is that door closed because it's everybody wants stuff, everybody desires stuff. Don't mean you're ready for it.
Yeah. So since we're on the topic of transparency, do you get frustrated? And how do you handle it when you do?
Man, yeah, every day. And it's unfortunate because if you're not careful, your frustration will cause you to forget, right? And kind of like Moses, he got frustrated with the people. God told him to speak to the rock. Instead of speaking to the rock, he smacked the rock with the staff. And you forget and you don't follow instruction, and then you got to get dealt with, right? And I didn't have a Moses and smacking a rock moment, but I certainly I remember it sticks with me because I really had to learn how to manage my frustration for different things. And, you got to remember your purpose, right? And so I'll never forget this time I was I was heading into work and, I got to drive downtown and this was like a early meeting that we had to have. So I got to be downtown, I think at like 8:00. I'm not going to make it. I'm running a little bit behind. I'm going to have to take this call from the car while dealing with traffic and everything. And so driving in Columbus is just horrible at times. People can't drive. Some folks would say, you can't drive either. I'm a good driver. But the reality of it is, I'm trying to get into work. I'm dealing with people who can't drive. And then, then I got to deal with the frustration of the people on the call. And I'll never forget, I'm right across the street from the building that I'm trying to get to, and I get ready to step down on the curb, off the curb. And for whatever reason, I know the reason, but for whatever reason, I'm getting ready to step off the curb. I'm not paying any attention at this point. I'm just in my thoughts. And as I get ready to step off the curb, I turn and then whoosh. A bus went right past my face.
Wow.
And when I say right past my face, I mean, for a split second, for whatever reason, I'm going to call it the Holy Spirit, stopped me. And I just turned. For whatever reason, I was about to step down. You know how you're walking, and I'm in my thoughts, and you're on autopilot. And that's what I was. I was on autopilot. And this was a normal path that I take. And it's a normal thing that I do, which is just to, go across the street. Now, at this time of day, it's usually not a bunch of traffic on the road. But, the occasional bus is coming through to drop people off. And I get ready to step down and I turn and just in that moment. And I had no reaction. There's people over here. There's people over here watching. And that bus goes past me, whoosh, as I'm getting ready to step down. And it just, you're standing there, and there's this bus that just goes whoosh. You know how long the buses are there? They're pretty long. And so it's just whoosh, and it's just going past. And you're just like, so you know what I did afterwards? After the bus got past me, I kept walking like nothing happened. But inside, I was shook. And so I went into a lot of prayer after that moment. Because a lot of things runs through your minds. Like, what would my wife have done? What would my kids have done? Because, if I'd have stepped down, I'm gone. I'm not going to be able to compete with a bus. And at the speed that bus was moving, I'm sure the bus driver was not thinking, surely this dude is not going to, they'd have probably thought I was trying to commit.
Wow.
And man, I was in prayer. And from that day, I really learned about just trying to manage your frustration.
Yeah.
God was watching me that day, and life could have easily been over. There wasn't no time for the life to flash before my eyes.
Yeah.
I would have just been. And I think even recently, it's not too long ago, I remember we would take like regular walks. One of my colleagues and I remember we were going to walk one day. And, we're coming up on the light. And my colleague, he's not really paying attention. I'm like, the light's changing. Right? And so, he stopped. He's looking the other direction. And then I look. The light's getting ready to change. There's a guy in front of us. He steps down off the curb. He's in the street. He's not paying any attention. And I look, and out of my peripheral, I see a car coming, and I'm like, no! And then he stops, and then he looks back, and then the car, whoosh, right past him.
Wow.
And you know what this guy did? The car went past him. He turned around, and he kept walking. But see, I had that same experience.
Yeah.
He didn't say thank you. He didn't say, man, good looking out for me. Oh my gosh, I almost lost my life. He didn't say it verbally.
Yeah.
But I've been there.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that guy was, if he didn't believe before that point, because had I not said nothing, he was creamed. He was going to be, and it wasn't a bus, it was a car. But that car was trying to make the light.
Mm-hmm. Full speed, yeah.
And he wasn't paying any attention.
Wow.
So sometimes we can be preoccupied and we can forget to pay attention. As believers, we can't afford it.
Mm-hmm.
We can't afford to let our frustrations, we can't afford to let life circumstances dominate our thoughts so much that we are unaware. We're not sober.
Mm-hmm.
We're not alert. So yeah, I've certainly had my moments of frustration, but I have learned to kind of manage them. Mm-hmm. And, there's various different ways that you can do that. Some folks, you stress ball or stress one of the little weight things that help build the strength of your hand, whatever you got to do. But you gotta bring yourself down off of that. Otherwise, if you give into it too much, it'll rule you, and who knows what you'll walk into as a result.
Yeah. Faith calls us to trust in God's timing and guidance, even when the world around us feels chaotic or uncertain. Proverbs 3, verses 5 through 6 reminds us to trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not depend on your own understanding. It's easy to feel overwhelmed by technological advancements, but faith calls us to a higher purpose, one that isn't dictated by algorithms or instant gratification. But how does this trust hold up in a world increasingly shaped by technology, where answers are instant, control feels within reach, and our patience and reliance on God can erode? How does technology, including advancements like AI, impact our ability to trust God's purpose for our lives? How do we balance innovation with faith? And how can we remain grounded in His promises when the world seems to push us towards self-sufficiency? It's a loaded question. So what are some of your thoughts bouncing off right now?
I mean, this technology erode. It can certainly, convenience can establish a paradigm in our minds, whether we like it or not. Mm-hmm. I think technology has introduced convenience.
Yeah.
We call this generation the microwave generation. And what we mean by that is that you get things quickly. Mm-hmm. Now, in the faith, it's much more about patience. Patience takes time. And so you've got this competing paradigms that makes it hard for people to wait on the things of God that are meant for them, because they think they should have it right now. And so usually what you have within the faith is that people bring their worldly desires into the kingdom with them, right? And then you are told that you have purpose and you have giftings, and God wants to see you, succeed, and He wants you to, this is a very, popular term, prosper. Mm-hmm. And as a result, now everything that you came in with regard to wanting to accomplish in the world. You've been reinforced that you are supposed to be able to accomplish those things in the world, but you may have unrealistic expectations about when that's supposed to happen. So kind of like we talked before with regard to not just getting there, but being able to maintain once you get there. We live in a generation where there's a lot of entitlement, where there's the assumption that you're just supposed to have because hey, I got my degree, so the job should just cometh, right? And it doesn't always shake out that way because you live in a world and there's competition. You may have your degree, but so does, however many other hundreds of thousands of people. And then within your geographic area, you're competing against that. So when you start to look at all of those things, and when you talk about instant gratification, right? The microwave generation, it's like, hey, I could put something and have a meal like that, whereas it used to take, hours for you, or an hour or more to have a meal. So you're constantly, with the internet at our fingertips, right? You're constantly being exposed to things coming quickly. But that's not how God operates. Mm-hmm. And now you're being conditioned to have something quickly. Yeah. And so it's no wonder that in many respects, folks are going to tune out, from wanting to hear things about the faith, because everything about the faith is a journey, right? It's a journey. It's a process. And so nobody wants to hear these days the process, or nobody wants to go on the journey. And I don't mean literally no one. Obviously there are those, but in many respects, there's this expectation that technology has introduced that has conditioned us to believe that things will come faster than what they actually will. And then if it doesn't come fast enough, now we got a problem. So I can't buy into your faith because it don't work fast enough. So I'm going to buy into what I feel like works fast enough. That eliminates the ability for people to be able to grow and mature. And when you talk about the erosion factor, I believe to a certain extent, sure, it can erode the positive qualities that come out by walking the faith out. But at the same time, I don't think that technology is necessarily the major proponent. I think that's more the desire of man's heart, more so than technology. Because technology has also put other things at our fingertips that is very beneficial to the kingdom. The fact that we can sit here, you and I, have a conversation, mm-hmm. and we can publish this on the World Wide Web on platforms that are easily accessible by all of the same people that have access to all of these other things that they can be distracted with. And if we utilize that tool to our advantage, we can somehow combat, a lot of what is actually out there.
And the second question was, how does technology, including advancements like AI, impact our ability to trust God's purpose for our lives?
I don't know. That's an interesting question, because, when you're thinking about AI, there's a lot of varying opinions about AI. Obviously, any tool that's created, when put in the hands of somebody who wants to utilize it for, some form of disastrous or destructive purpose, it's a problem. That being said, when we start talking about AI and trusting in God, I don't know. I believe that believers, those who will believe, and those who won't. And I know that we're going to, for those of us who are believers, we will be far outweighed by those who don't believe. I believe that inventions like AI scare people, but I think that's because they forget who's in control. at the end of the day, God is in control. See, I believe wholeheartedly that God is in control. So whatever the mechanism is, I'm sure they felt the same way when guns were invented. I'm sure they felt the same way, with different swords that were invented, the atom bomb invented. There's all kind of things that you can name throughout history that came along as inventions that I'm sure there were folks who operated in a certain level of fear. But I don't operate out of fear. I don't give myself over to fear. And so I always evaluate it from the standpoint is, okay, if this came about, it only came about because the Lord allowed it to come about. Now, how do we use this for our purposes? Guess what? They created roads that allowed us to travel a little bit faster, to get to places that were hard to get to. So I look at AI as another road that's been created that allows us to leverage it to get to things faster. Mm-hmm. And so we have to learn how to not be so averse. Yeah, there's evil in the earth, and yeah, there's going to be, improper usage of things. But for those of us who believe, we need to be trying to figure out how do we use these things to the benefit of the kingdom. I'm always going to be in the mindset that the things that exist for a purpose, and that purpose, you can always utilize something or misuse something that against its intended purpose. I'll never forget a friend of mine, really more mentored than friend. He gave a message to the youth ministry one particular time, and he's like, he pulled out his credit card and he said, "You guys see this right here?" They're like, yeah, we see it. He's like, "Do you know what this is?" They're like, "Yeah, it's a credit card." And they were like, and then so he's like, "You know how much money is on this?" "No." He's like, "I'm not telling you either." He's like, "No, but this is a tool, right?" Mm-hmm. It's a tool. But if misused, it can be made worth less. And he says, so it's a tool and a mechanism for me to be able to access capital, money, so that I can pay for things. But if on a snowy day, I decide to use this tool to scrape ice off of my windshield, I'm misusing it for its purpose. Sure, it can work to probably do that, but that's not what it was purposed for. So you can say that just about anything. Anything that's been created can be misused. People are misused all the time, right? Let me not go down that path right now. But the idea is that the things that I can't operate in fear about them coming about. My objective is to find out, how can I use this to advance the purposes of the kingdom? That should be my mindset. So do I believe AI is going to erode the trust in God? I believe AI, if you let it, can become a distraction just like anything else that's been created. Mm-hmm. And for those of us who are believers, I don't believe it has to be something that we fear.
And this brings us to the end of our second episode of the Power of F4R Podcast. It's been such a privilege to explore these meaningful conversations about faith, doubt, and how we navigate a world shaped by science and technology while trusting in God's promises. This episode isn't just a conversation, it's an invitation. We want to hear from you. What resonated with you today? What topics would you like us to explore in future episodes? Your feedback is so important as we grow and continue to make this podcast a resource that serves you. And don't forget, we're here every Saturday at 7 p.m. with new episodes. Next week, we'll dive into the theme Equipped, based on Ephesians 6 verses 13 through 17. Therefore, put on the full armor of God, so that when the day of evil comes, you may be able to stand your ground. We'll talk about what it means to be spiritually prepared, how to face doubt, fear, temptation, and why this armor is essential for believers. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're incredibly grateful for your time, your support, and we can't wait to continue this journey with you. Until next time, stay faithful, take care, and God bless.